Have you ever tried to grow your music business in your local scene and just felt like you were met with a whole bunch of resistance? It was a huge uphill battle and you really don't know how to grow there? Well, in today's video, I want to share with you how to actually do that. And I have some experience in this. I actually started out growing my band in the local scene of Oklahoma City, and then we eventually traveled to pretty much 48 of the 50 states around the country, playing over 800 shows. I say that not to flex, but to let you know that I've actually done this, so I know how it works, and I want to share with you kind of how local scenes have changed. There's a lot of artists that are operating in their local scene kind of in the old way, the way of the past. And as you know, things have changed, and I'm not even talking about just pre-internet to post-internet. I'm talking about from like 2000 to 2015, from 2015 to now. Like those are two different eras, even though they're all online. People don't even really think about that a lot of times. They just think of like the pre-online era and the post-online era. But let's dive into the main changes that have happened with local music scenes, but also maybe some tough truths that we need to accept to embrace the new local music scene, and then what to do about it. How do we actually operate within this new local scene? So first things first, the original purpose of local music scenes back in the day, pre-internet, was they were hubs that labels and A&R representatives could go out and use to figure out where new talent was. So something would be buzzing up in Seattle during the late 80s, early 90s. So A&R reps start coming out to check out Mother Love Bone, Mudhoney, Soundgarden, Nirvana, and Alice in Chains, and all these kind of acts. And all of a sudden, a scene starts to brew and the reason that scene blows up is because a bunch of artists in a particular area were discovered at the same time by labels, A&R agents, and all that kind of stuff, so that they could, go into the music industry machine, get promoted, get marketed, get music videos, radio, all that kind of good stuff. Now it's like, whoa, look at this huge scene that came out of Seattle. And that's because labels would sit there and survey, figure out what's the hot spots, where can I go and get new talent. And a lot of bands and artists operate in their music business from that perspective. They operate in it from this perspective of, okay, I gotta go out there, gotta put on a good show because some label exec or some manager, you never knew who could see you. I know a lot of people that do that. And for example, I think the better results you get are when you focus on the fans, as opposed to focusing on who are the industry people that I might be able to impress with my set. I'm like, worry about impressing the audience. Worry about impressing the fans and figuring out how they're going to be like, whoa, that was a great show. You focus on that, I guarantee if there just so happens to be someone in the industry, they'll pay attention because they'll see how you made everyone else pay attention. I can go on a whole tangent about that. But a lot of artists go out there and think that the reason, we need to get this all big is because it's gonna kind of blow up in some capacity. Things have changed. The scenes communities have moved around a little bit as far as where they hang out. I want you to think about this for a second. Some of us are too young to remember this, and some of y'all are old enough to remember this. Pre-social media, pre-internet, right? If you wanted to go hear music and just hang out with your friends, the local music venue was the place. There was not just one place, but that was one of the spots that you go to hear new music, to hang out with people that like the same kind of music. There was a culture, there was a community there. Now, people don't hang out as much in that sense culturally, like I'm going to go hang out with all the people that like this stuff. That happens a lot online now. People are in their Facebook groups, they're in their Discord servers, they're in their Reddit threads, they're in their Snapchat conversations. Everything's very compartmentalized and localized online now. And so because of that, the dynamics within a scene have changed. And as a consequence, things are less connected to, it used to be, for instance, venues were like staples or pillars of local music scenes. But kind of a tough pill to swallow here is that the scenes are not the venues. The venues are sentimental, right? And that's why we have this connection to venues, is the memories that we made there. And so there's sentimental connections there. But people will move. People move between venues all the time. I've seen that in Oklahoma City. We had a venue called the Chameleon Room And it was also a two-part venue. There was a lounge that held like 150 people called Leon's Lounge. And so you had the Chameleon Room and Leon's Lounge, big show, small show. You know, you could do two things there and people would go and hang out and it was a good time, but then the venue shut down. And then there was something called Oklahoma City Limits that opened up. And so everyone, the same people, would just flock over to Oklahoma City Limits. And so don't worry so much about like, we got to get into this one venue. Cool. Maybe if you want to get into the ballroom, you know, we've got something called the Diamond Ballroom here in Oklahoma City. And as a consequence, people are like, oh man, I would love to play the Diamond. And I've played the Diamond probably about 10 times or so. And it's a great experience when you play it. And I know that that one's kind of a cultural landmark because it's been around since like the 50s or the 60s. It's been around for a long time. It's not going anywhere. And so it's cool to play those things. Excuse me. The thing, though, that makes the biggest difference is just the impact you make with the people that are in front of you. It doesn't matter which venue you're at, okay? So venues are not the scenes because venues are just sentimental. The scenes are the people, I would say. The people that will travel from venue to venue to see the bands that they like. But that's the thing. It's a little bit more individualistic nowadays. Because back in the pre-internet era, it was very communal. All the bands are like, if I'm a musician and I want somewhere to go hang out on the weekend, I'm probably going to go to the venue. You know, like if I don't have social media or anything like that, you know, let's go see a movie and then let's go to a show or whatever. You know, like there's just all those kind of different things that a lot of younger people don't think about how people used to engage with their communities. But now that it's changed, everyone's doing it online, like I mentioned. And so that individualistic frame, what I meant by that is instead of bands kind of forming these giant families and coalitions like they used to, like in, for example, the Seattle grunge scene, it's a little bit more, people are kind of focused on them and theirs. But there's a way to do it that is not so just individualistic. For example, I like to view it from this lens. I don't support every single band in my scene. I think one, you just can't. There's too many bands and on so much limited time. You can't support every band in the scene. Plus, that's actually hurting the meritocratic nature of the music business, which we want. We want stuff based on merit, not just superficiality. So we kind of want this thing where if a band isn't that good, we don't want to just go to their show to give them lip service. Oh, it was a great show, man. Great stuff. Great, you know, blah, blah, pat on the butt. But instead, what we kind of do is we find the bands that we do enjoy in our scene and we go to their shows. So that way the bands that we feel are, you know, deserve more and we want to succeed alongside of us, we go to their shows. And then if we see people from other bands at our shows, we'll know that we've kind of got their support, right? And there's a great band in Oklahoma City called Atris, and I feel like we've got that sort of thing where if Atris is playing, if none of us, you know, some of us have kids and stuff like that, if we've got the time, we'll always try to go to the Atris show. And they'll do the same thing. We'll always see members of Atris in the audience at our local gigs. And it's sort of this camaraderie that's built up in an individualistic frame. I know that sounds kind of like paradoxical. How can it be individualistic if you're collaborating with other people? It's like we both have our own individual goals as artists and bands, right? We both want to succeed in our field, right? But we understand that if we can leverage each other's audiences, that's a win-win situation, right? They get to be exposed to our fans who could like them, and then we get to get exposed to their fans who could like us. And so there's this sort of symbiotic growth. I kind of recommend you create your own little syndicate in your local scene. You've got your 2, 3, 4, 5 bands that you can do shows with. Maybe there's a little bit more. Maybe you got more great bands in your scene. And that you know that, oh, we could put together a show with this person, this person, this person. It's going to be a great show. Oh, yeah, we put a show together with this person, this person, this person. It's a great show. It's like you pursuing the goal of having the best audience possible so that you can have the best audience to perform in front of kind of facilitates the need for you to pick the best bands that you can, right? So building the relationships with ones that you think your fans would like and their fans would like you, that's going to be a win-win situation where you can kind of start to grow now. But here's the thing, this is another like tough pill to swallow, is that some bands, I would say most bands in a local scene, suck. Now, let me explain. I know some people just went, oh, I can't believe you said that. Let me explain what I mean by sucks, okay? Most bands that, and I use this kind of like a Pareto distribution, an 80-20 distribution. There's 20% of bands who are good. And of that 20%, maybe 10% of them are really good. And then of those 10%, maybe 1% of them are like incredible, amazing, right? Now that's just the 20%. Then you've got this 80% of bands who maybe haven't rehearsed enough to be super tight so that when they're playing in front of people, the show is the most impactful it can be. Or maybe they haven't worked on, making sure that their vocals are in pitch or on time. That's a big issue. Maybe they haven't worked on stage presence, so they're up there just kind of looking like they hate life, even though in their head they're having a great time. But on the surface, they look like they hate life. Nobody wants to see that, right? And so what happens is, if we fill our bills with too many bands that suck, I'm using that as just kind of a buzzword, just keep in mind, then that's going to damage the scene, right? And I know what some people are going to say, because I've heard it before. People are like, well, how are they going to grow? How are they going to get better? You get better by practicing at home and rehearsing together as a band like once a week. That's what me and my band did for 10 years. Every single week we got together. Unless somebody was sick, gone on vacation, whatever, unless there was some occasion, we were meeting up and we still do meet up every single week. Mondays or Wednesdays, depending on the availability of every member. And we look at it as that's our investment in the band to stay tight. And it's gotten to a point now where we're doing this for 10 years, there's certain songs that we just don't need to play anymore. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are like, man, we haven't played that song in a long time. Let's just play it real quick. And then you're like, yep, nope, it's still in there. It's in there. I've played this song about 1,500 times. I don't think it's going anywhere in my muscle memory. Most bands don't commit, or artists don't commit to being that good or even close to that good before they go out and perform in front of people. I've seen in like hip hop, it's very popular for hip hop artists to throw their song on behind them and then rap over the song while their vocals are still going on behind them. And, maybe it's a scene difference and stuff, but I would say, like, if you really want to impress people, take the vocal track out, be so well rehearsed that you can do it without that vocal track in the background and it sounds good. That's going to be more impressive, because when people can tell you're playing along to a track, it's kind of like you go to a wrestling match and you understand, who's going to win ahead of time. It kind of kills the magic a little bit, unless it's like, classic scene where Mankind gets thrown off the Hell in a Cell. My wrestling fans out there know what I'm talking about. Everyone else is like, what is he talking about? That's okay. But we have to pretty much realize this. Most bands just haven't committed to getting to a proficiency where now when they're in front of people, they can actually really be not even like 100% best version of themselves, but like a good presentable version of themselves. So that's one thing we have to take a look into this like whole equation is it's more individualistic, because if we're too collectivist about it, about like, no, just throw these bands that, we need to give them a stage to show what they got. I'm like, okay, I understand doing that once, but once you've seen the band and you know where they're at, until they demonstrate otherwise, maybe with some posts or whatever, I wouldn't personally book them on the bill. And that's just of a safety precaution, because I'm not about to sit there and wait around to figure out if a band gets their stuff together. I've got my own stuff to worry about, and the other bands in the scene have their own stuff to worry about. So there's a communal aspect to it, but it is more individualistic, right? Back in the day, I use the Seattle grunge scene because it's a really great example. They would have collaborative projects between members. Like there was Temple of the Dog, where it was members of Mother Love Bone, which became Pearl Jam, and then there was actually Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam. Soundgarden was mixed in there, and I believe there was another member from another Seattle band. I can't recall at the moment. But It was a huge supergroup of just people in a community giving tribute to a person who had passed away and some of the songs that were left behind. And we look at that, and that's not really here anymore. So it's a little bit more individualistic now. Even though we can foster a sense of community, it's just a little bit more narrow than it used to be. Now, one of the last tough truths that I want to mention about the local music scene before we talk about what to do inside the scene is that promoters play favorites. They will tell you they don't, because they have to, for their own reputation's sake. But those that understand the business understand that promoters play favorites. But for those of you that are upset, for those of you that are like, I knew it, I knew my promoter played favorites, and that's why I don't get any gigs, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I would take a step back and say this. Okay, we have to understand human psychology. They're going to play favorites. What are the criteria by which they pick their favorites? If they are a good promoter, the metrics they care about are how many people can you bring to the show. And I guarantee you, even if they're a bad promoter, if you tell them how many people you can bring to the show and it's a substantial number that means something to them, again, that's a relative thing depending on the size of the venue, but you tell them a number that makes sense, even if they're a bad promoter, they understand that it's good to get that band on the bill. So even if you think your promoters are super, super, super crooked, I would ask you to take a step back and say, well, let's ask ourselves a question. Other than my belief in how awesome my music is there any other reason for that promoter to work with me? That I can sit there and say, I provide value to your establishment and I can articulate it here. And then you say it. But most artists go, and there's nothing that comes out, right? It's Ace Ventura. And the answer is, that's what most people do. They're like, yeah, how come I don't get these gigs? I'm like, how many people could you bring to the gig if he booked you tomorrow? And he's like, I could get like 10 people. It's like, that, no wonder, right? But for instance, when I'm trying to penetrate a new promotion company and get on their radar, I'm trying to penetrate a different market, let's say, that I haven't been to before. I give them references. Hey, in my hometown, we can draw as high as 150 people for a single show. And then they're like, oh, okay. Have you ever played here before? No, we never played here before. But like, at least they're like, oh, they're a band that actually draws people. They're just looking to expand, as opposed to, or even if you've came through that venue or area before and you're trying to get into a bigger venue that's in that new area, you have to be able to track, okay, last time we played in your city, we drew 100 people or we drew 75 people to the show. If you put on a couple great locals with us, I think we could really put together a great show. There's different ways of attack, right? But you're demonstrating the value that you can provide to them because you actually know you can. A lot of artists, if they're being real, know that the answer is like, but just give me a shot. My music is awesome. Okay, so what I would say is play for free. The guy who's always talking about how to earn money about music said play for free? Yep, I did, because that's what my band did in the very, 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 very beginning. You don't do this for long, you don't do it forever. But when you have no demonstrable value that you can give to a promoter or a venue owner, you have to offer up your services for free and say, well, how about this? We'll open up the show. You don't got to pay us anything. It'll just be exposure, as much as musicians hate that. But if you're an opener, you're playing 30 minutes before another band and another band, go up there, put on a freaking, because 30 minutes isn't that long. It's like 6 songs or 5 songs, depending on how long the songs are. And you just go out there and you throw down for 30 minutes. People are going to be like, who was that? And that's kind of our attack plan whenever we go to play a show. Our sets determine our goals a little bit. If we have 40, 45, an hour, we want those sets to be dynamic and engaging. If we have a 30-minute set, a 25-minute set, we're going to go out there with the most intense, ear-grabbing stuff we can do. It's going to be a way more intense set, way more. Dax is going, for the extra fast solos, and Gabe's going for the high notes, and, there's more of that going on because we're trying to really get them in just 30 minutes. So figure out how you can create a set like that so that now the next time you try to book a place, you know you got some people that are coming back, right? And then you do it again. Now the promoter's kind of like, ooh, I've gotten this band to come open up a couple times, and it seems like now more people are really enjoying them and they're starting to come back. I remember this person from the last show, they came back. Now you have a little bit more of a reputation. Now you can kind of inch in there and say, all right, so, we showed you what we could kind of do with a couple shows, so at least we could do now is a door split. And now they're like, okay, we can do a door split because that's still kind of meritocratic. It's still, you get paid based on how many people you bring in. And so you can demonstrate your value again. Now you play again and you really pull the stops out marketing-wise. You get the family and friends. This is when I recommend bringing the family and friends, because push those numbers up as high as you can so that promoter's like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm happy to pay these guys door splits. By the way, don't think that you need to graduate from the door split phase too soon, because if you can genuinely bring in people, you will make more money from the door split than you would with a guarantee. I'll tell you that right now. I went into a venue and we tried to book it. It was a place called the 89th Street Collective. And we went in to book a gig and we said, could you give us a guarantee of 400? And they're like, we can't do a guarantee of 400, but we'll do a door split. And so at first we were like, we work hard in this local scene to get to the point where we can demand this guarantee. And then we did the show and our door split was like $1,000. So in the end, it ended up being a good thing. We ended up getting double what we would have gotten from a guarantee, and that wasn't including merch. Once you included merch, it was closer to like $2,000, a little over $2,000, and that gave us room to actually pay the bands that we were with more. That was a really cool thing that we were like, this was so successful that we're going to kick an extra 100 to this band and an extra 100 to this band so that we can, like, that's another thing too. Like when I talk about things being individualistic, don't be individualistic in that sense. If you really have your like kind of cup runneth over a little bit to like, oh gosh, yeah, that's great. And the bands, like we had the people that were the bands underneath us, we booked them, they were our friends and stuff. And we were going to give them a minimum of 100 because that's what they wanted. But to be able to give them double that, and sometimes triple for some of the other bands, that was like, yes, successful show. And now we have a system. So where it's like, do the door split, but just market the heck out of it. And now we've even got to the point where you invest in advertising. You invest in advertising for the show, maybe get more people through the door. It'll offset the ads if you do the ads right, and the cost per ticket sale isn't too much. Anyway, that's a whole other video that I could go into. But you have to look at it from this perspective. That's what promoters care about. At the end of the day, what they care about is getting butts in seats and getting feet in front of the stage. That's what they care about. So if you can come up to a promoter and provide enough value, you will get the gigs. That's one thing. It's not the sexy answer, but it is the true answer, okay? And those are some of the tough truths about the local music scene, but what do we do about it? What's the next step? So I've talked about collaboration. Collaborate with the artists who you enjoy. Try to have this symbiotic growth with your fan base, right? You're getting exposed to their fan base. They're getting exposed to your fan base. You can kind of grow together so that when you guys put on a show together, it's a little bit more of an, it's not just my audience and this show over here isn't just their audience, it's our audience. And then we put a couple bands with us and it becomes even bigger, and that's sort of the collaborative effort you want to go into. Heck, have them featured on one of your new songs. So that way it's not like you're doing Temple of the Dog, you're doing a whole project together that's it's its own thing, but you have this collaboration that is a natural promotion mechanism for both bands to get exposed to both of their audiences, right? So as individualistic as the scene has become, the ones who are succeeding most, in my opinion, are the ones who are willing to be more collaborative and have those, I hate to say it too, you can play your favorites too. If the promoter's going to play their favorites, you can play your favorites, and everyone has their favorites. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to give a band a chance, give a band a chance. That's your call, right? If you want to keep it to your tight-knit group, keep it to your tight-knit group. That's your choice, right? So I would use your scene sort of twofold. One, find the other bands that you can collaborate with, right? And have this cross-promotional relationship or, business-wise. The next thing, use your scene as the fertile grounds to test content and test marketing and test all different kinds of things. So, for example, In Oklahoma City, there's some artsy districts. So we can test different content by doing it in these artsy districts, maybe as a cool backdrop to some of our videos. Maybe what we can do is use our performances on stage at these venues to create content that therefore goes onto our social media. Maybe we use the green room in these venues as a place for content that goes on our social media. Every aspect of your involvement in the scene could be filmed, documented, and turned into content. And that's something I think really will build more buzz about it because, like I mentioned way in the beginning of the video, the community is moving online. And because the community is moving online, that's where we should put our focus. We should put our focus into how do we get that community online to check us out, look at what we're doing, and that's how we're going to grow. So as much as I've gone through and shown you how to operate in a local scene in this video today, there's still a lot more, but also this is what I would say, because everything has moved online, don't put so much weight, don't put so many eggs in the local scene basket, right? It's one arm of your multiple arms of your music business. Don't put too much weight into it to think that that's the first thing you need to tackle before anything else. I would argue that if you've got music, go out there and start putting content out there. And what you can even do in the local scene, film, document it so you can turn it into more content, more marketing. Sometimes it helps for people to see you on stage. That's authority and credibility bias. And so that helps kind of a little bit in certain aspects. But don't get so, like, oh, my local scene doesn't support me. It's like, no, that's just not how it works. Look at your local radio station. Maybe they have a local talent show type thing. That's what we have here. We have a radio station called 100.5 The Cat, and they have a feature called The Local Talent Show, hosted by Jay Ramone, who's awesome. And Jay just plays a bunch of local music, and if there's a group of local artists who have a show coming up that weekend, he'll play their songs inside of the programming. So see if you have anything like that. See if you can find anything like that. If you can't, that's okay. Do what you can within your scene, or if you're in one of those like tiny rural areas outside of a big suburb, so you have a really tiny scene that's basically non-existent, find the nearest big scene. If you're in Beaumont, maybe Houston's your scene. Beaumont's got an okay scene. I've played a couple places there before. But, look at it that way. Use everything in your scene as the foundation of some just more marketing material that you have. Because ultimately what you should be focusing on is the new kind of order of doing things. Like I mentioned, the old order of doing things was go out, tour, play a bunch of shows, and that's how you build the audience. Now, it's kind of like, and it made this shift on us like literally as we started our career, so it was very disorienting, but now it's you go online and build the audience so that when you go to play shows, people come up, or they actually come out. And that's what you're looking for. So hopefully this video has kind of debunked certain perspectives about the local music scene that maybe you had, or maybe you know some other people that have been exuding this type of mindset and you sort of know how things really work, right? And this is, again, it's not always the prettiest business, but if we look at the reality of the situation, right, we realize venues aren't going to last forever. So don't get so emotionally attached to the venue and thinking that's the only place that we could be. Diversify the venues that you go to. We can be more collaborative even in this more individualistic world that we're living in. We can understand that promoters, have favorites and will play favorites, but we can actually do things to improve the odds that we will become one of those favorites, and that it's okay to not support every single band in your scene. It's not realistic, and like I said, it's not good for the scene as a whole anyway. But what you can do is figure out, like I mentioned, how to collaborate with the right people to grow your audiences together, and then leverage social media so that y'all can build your online following that converts into some of the more business savvy stuff that we talk about on this channel, like going into your email list and then creating sales campaigns that actually convert without being too pushy, and all those other things that we've talked about on this channel. So make sure to check out more stuff on this channel if you haven't. I don't have much more time in this video today to go into it, but thank you for watching. If you've watched all the way up to this point, subscribe and hit the notification bell if you got some value from it today. Also, if you'd like some one-on-one help implementing this stuff into your music business, figuring out how to attract those people online, figure out where those communities are hanging out and how to bring them into your world, then book a one-on-one coaching call that we have link in the description. You can apply for it if that's something that you're interested in, if you're a serious artist. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.